Hello and welcome to your next episode. How are you doing? I'm Amy.
And I'm Louise.
How are you doing, Lou?
I'm all right. I am absolutely all right. But on Monday, obviously, Boris announced his roadmap for coming out of lockdown. And there's one bit of it that's making me really, really anxious. And I did mention it on my Instagram stories. And it's the hugging people. Everybody all over social media,
I saw this.
they're all saying that they want to start, like, they can't wait to hug everyone on June the 21st.
You're not a hugger, are you?
I don't want to hug people. And it's been one of the highlights. It's honest to God, it's been something I've really liked about the pandemic is that we haven't been allowed to hug people when we see them. And I am a very affectionate person, but the only people I want to hug, and as I say, I was saying the other day on Instagram about this, the only people I want to hug are my children and Paul, my husband, you know. And
I thought you were going to say and Dickie, the dog, and I thought Paul
he's
would
really
be
smelly. He's really old and smelly. He really smells. So I don't really want to hug him, but I will actually show him a bit of affection. But so I'm happy to hug my children, and I can't wait to hug my big children again that aren't at home.
Yeah.
And I want to hug Paul. And so I've introduced. I sort of did a public service announcement for people that know me in real life that I've introduced the vagina rule, which is basically people in my circle, they know that I love them, but I don't. To avoid that unnecessary hugging, my vagina rule is unless you've come out of my vagina or you're someone that I allow into it, I don't want to hug you. Simples. It's so simple. It's the vagina.
Do you know what,
rule.
Louise? If we had more time, we could really unpack this, couldn't we? We could really what. Yeah, what is there? What is it about personal space being invaded?
I don't know.
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
I know. I just really don't like it, and it's relentless, isn't it, with people hugging and kissing? You know, do you do one kiss or two kisses? And eat and people said, "Oh, well, what about the elbow bashing?" No, fuck off. That's really fucking awkward as well. It's really all uncomfortable, and I don't want people making it an issue either. I don't want people going, "Oh, Louise, you don't want to hug," or sort of hovering with that sort of, "Does she? Will I? Won't I? Do I want to hug her?" Let's just get it out there. I don't want to hug you. I don't want to kiss you unless stick to the vagina rule. And I don't think I need to explain that twice. It's simple.
If in doubt, consult the vagina rule.
Consult my vagina, I don't think basically.
There's not going to be any grey area about that.
No, there's no grey areas in my vagina. No. You're quite right, Amy. I have had some friends getting in touch, though, with sort of filthy suggestions for, how they could circumnavigate my vagina rule. But, really filthy. But, that's why they're my friends, because, I love a bit of filth. But anyway, how are you, Amy?
I'm okay.
Yeah? You're doing lots of gigs online, aren't you, at the moment?
So, yeah, I'm in this position where I'm kind of like, I sort of, I have this internal dialogue of, well, I will continue to do online gigs, because I think what's happened with this pandemic is that, especially everyone, I say this to everybody who's sort of like a parent and have got children at home, your life has shrunk and you have reduced, and your only role is to facilitate that homeschooling. And, if you're working as well and trying to juggle that. And so I audaciously call my comedy gig, where I get approximately £35 after a whip round, as work. And it's something that's part of my identity. So I don't want to lose that. But the reality is, when I do 2 or 3 sort of gigs, even if it's on the laptop, which is a lot easier than going into London, I've said that before. And so... but I do, the wheels come off and I get a bit frazzled and I get a bit tired because I'm quite wired after it. This is all sort of first world luxury problem sort of complaining.
You don't have to apologise for it. No.
I'm British. Yeah. I'm British and I will apologise for being a nuisance in everyone's ear holes about my, terrible life. I think the 8th of March is a bit of a line in the sand, and they're apparently going back. Let's see what happens if they do go back.
Well, it's the first thing. That cannot be stalled by anything. It is happening on the 8th of March, Amy. Absolutely. It's happening.
Louise, you shared something the other day, and it was a 9-minute video of I'm so sorry, I can't remember. Oh,
Mammologist. Yeah,
yes.
God, she's bloody good.
And I thought, and
we're
you said,
talking about
just
Instagram here, people. Just actually quickly, Amy, we could perhaps get our numbers up quickly. They can find us on Instagram. I'm at Louise Daniels Official, and what are you, Amy?
Amy Koo Performs.
Yeah, I mean the links in our show notes, but but yeah, go on. Yeah, Mammologist on Instagram is she's fantastic.
I just thought, oh God, that's so true. Everybody's sort of like, 21st of June, let's get the party booked, let's get the alcohol in, and let's all even on Newsnight or Peston or something. We were watching it the other night, and all the graphs that they bring out, and it was all about, we're going to all go and get pissed on the 21st of June. Well, I've been sober for 3 years, and the fact that I'm not inhaling meth off the kitchen worktop at this stage is a result, to be honest. But I thought that's really interesting what she said, to credit the mammologist, that is a deferring tactic. It's a thing that we do to not sit in this moment, which is this, as she said, like a defrosting, a thawing, a processing, because we've all been like clenched. Our sphincters clenched, like about everything, and this trauma, and you could roll your eyes, and I know my gran. Anybody who follows me on Instagram, follow for my 85 grandmother, Marion. She's just so, dyed in the wood, sort of, dyed in the wool, sort of northern working class, but she's Tory, and so the government have not put a step wrong. You can't talk to her about that. And in my day, we would have taken the washing down to the stream and run it over a rock, I think that it's really important to just sit in and just process what the fuck has actually just happened. Because if you don't do that, I think you're going to run headlong into some really, you just push that down and just keep going for the, I think there's going to be some decompressing is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Anyway, on that happy note, listen, we can all just get our hot water bottles, maybe, try and get some time off work on the 8th of March, get the kids back to school, then try and get some annual leave and just go and lay under a duvet for at least, what do you reckon, 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, it hasn't affected me because I've just got the almost 16-year-old who's pretty just gets on with it. But I just think, all you lot that have done homeschooling, you just do what the fuck you like for as long as you like, really. Once those kids are back at school, you have my blessing. So that's
what I'll do. Thank you. And that will be in the court of law. My defence lawyer will bring up this as Exhibit A, the permission to do whatever I want.
Absolutely.
Anyway, today we've got a really, really lovely episode. We've got two guests, Annabel Rivkin and Emilie McMeekan. And they founded the Midult in 2016 as basically an antidote to everything else that's out there for grown-up women. A mixture of conversation and information. I'm sure that there's a Venn diagram, isn't there, of our listeners and their listeners. Hopefully, if you don't know them, go and find them. They're both journalists. They're really good friends since school, and part of the Midult empire is their podcast, and that podcast is called I'm Absolutely Fine, which is how we discovered them. And they've written a book of the same title, and it's a manual for imperfect women.
And our chat with Annabel and Emilie is coming up.
Annabel and Emilie, thanks so much for joining us today. We came across you through your podcast, I'm Absolutely Fine, which is just a brilliant title and so relatable. And you have a book of the same name and also a website. Can you give us, if it's not too wanky a question, like your elevator pitch, like a summary of the Midult empire?
I can't believe you're asking us to be succinct after a year in lockdown. I mean, I'm tempted to say no.
I don't blame you.
What happens then? We wondered why no one was talking to us the way that we talk to each other. And everything seemed to have been put through a really sort of peculiar filter. And so really the Midult came about as a counter proposal to all the pelvic floor squeezing and sort of Argus-centric oppressive worthiness that was all around it. It was a challenge. It was a connector. And we realised that there seemed to be an expectation that once you go into your 30s, 40s, 50s, that there would be a sort of numbing, a dumbing down of feeling. And we found that the opposite was happening. We were feeling all of the feelings all of the time. And it was this particular sort of pinch point where, this is a bit wanky, but someone told me, I didn't even read it, but someone told me that Simone de Beauvoir described it as a time in your life when you coincide with yourself. And it seemed to us that that was happening just as we were becoming invisible to everybody else. And we also, but really it grew out of friendship because we love each other and we wanted to do something together. So we knew we wanted to do something together before we knew what we wanted to do.
So how did you guys meet?
So, well, Annabel was in the year above me at school, which is one of those things where, so I knew who she was, but of course she didn't know who I was because, you know, who remembers
No, that's the hierarchy.
Exactly, literally. And then...
But that also was interesting when it came to launching the Midult, because we realised that what everyone was doing was sort of looking downwards in terms of age, and they were desperate to know what everybody what teenagers thought. Teenagers are great, but they live on their own little island, and once you get to 20, you're off the island. You've got no access to the island. Well, you have now, really, through Instagram and TikTok. But I'm not that interested in the island. But we remember being at school and thinking, as Emilie says, we didn't. If you were 12, you didn't care what the 9-year-olds were doing. You cared what the 15-year-olds were doing. You were reading just 17. And so now we find with the people that read the book, listen to the podcast, and follow us on Instagram in any way, a lot of them are sort of 25 to 30 and going, thank God someone's being honest about what's in the post.
Yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely.
sorry, Em. Yes, we were at school. She was the year below me, and I sort of knew
I love
who
that
you were.
because the high school is kicking in there, where like the year 7 girl just the older girls are talking. No, but that is so true. And actually, I was just going to say, to relate it to us, I look up to Louise so much because she is that sort of next stage ahead of me. So if she's having like issues with parenting, obviously much older children than I've got, I'm kind of like, I'm gonna save that bit of advice because I'm gonna need that in about 5 years. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the big things for that is sort of breaking the conspiracy of silence around all of the things that face us as grown-up women. Because if we don't talk about it, exactly, how can anyone prepare for it? And also, if we don't talk about it, amongst ourselves, then you sort of live in secret and shame, which isn't going to help anyone.
One of the reasons that we lovingly syringed anything about children or parenthood out of everything that we do, because there's lots of brilliant stuff that aggregates around that and do it far better than we could. But also we didn't want it to matter if we had kids or not, or if anyone else had kids or not, because those conversations can be wonderful, but also quite lazy. We could sit here and talk about children and the schools going back and whatever it might be for hours. But in a way, there's no nutrition in that. So you sort of leave with nothing. So we wanted to strip that away so we could talk about women and identity and what's driving us mad or potentially could make us happy. And Emilie and I, after, however many years, 10 years or whatever, re-met on the desk of a newspaper magazine where we were both working. And it was quite a traumatic environment. And so we just clung to each other like life rafts, really. And fell in love, didn't we, Em?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was quite a difficult time in both our lives, personally as well. And I think those transition periods, like late 20s, early 30s, when there's so many societal expectations of how you should be living your life and everything. So we were sort of doubly traumatized.
Yeah, people were dying. We had addictions. We had all sorts of post-traumatic stress things going on, therapy, drugs. I mean, boyfriends, terrible breakups, nervous breakdowns. It was that time when life starts to hit you really hard. So we just sort of held hands.
Yes, exactly. So, and that in some ways sort of, I suppose, being the backdrop to the way that we approach the Midult, i.e. totally sort of transparently in terms of how we talk about how our feelings, because that's how Annabel and I have talked about it for, ever. And so it's a long time now.
Emilie and I had spent so long, like every other woman that we now talk to, hundreds and thousands of women through doing the Midult, thinking, is it just me? Panicking, is it gnawing on that, the brainworm of loneliness that says, is it just me? Is it just me? And then you look around and you see, the egg freezing, and the brain freezing and the terror and the Tinder and the loneliness and the divorce and the panic and the rage and the rage and the career crisis and the desire for reset. But then you also see the laughter and the erudition and the wisdom and the proficiency. And we have to remember that those things, you can be a work in progress and a fucking masterpiece at the same time. And so we want to appreciate that in everybody that we have contact with and in each other.
Fabulous.
And I think the way the media presents, especially in our 20s, there's such a sort of strong kind of narrative about, you should be getting married and you should, how to please your man, how to go from day to night clothes, it's a sort of an illogical kind of framing and constraint of how we should be as women and how we need to live our lives. And then
yes, Emily and I got fixated on how to get from office to bar. We were like, you walk from the office to the bar.
It's so insidious, isn't it? That they would access that through fashion, which is a genuine interest, but actually just tapping away there at how, you need to look a certain way to fucking please who? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And then, of course, then you get to your 30s and you go, wait, hold on, where's the fucking fairy tale? Why don't I feel like this? Why isn't everything working out? And then you really struggle. And I really, I had a really serious kind of, sort of episode where I kind of lost all control of myself and heard voices and was panicked and terrible anxiety attacks around when I was 38, 39, because I feel like you carry all these expectations around with you that you've been told about the way that you should be. And then when it doesn't look like that, you think, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? How am I wrong? I'm not good enough. Oh my God. And it filtered into everything.
Yeah, you think, is it just me? And then you realize that it is almost never just you. And even though people are unique, feelings aren't unique. And they can hit you really hard, good and bad and corrosive and funny. This is the thing, fucking funny.
Yeah.
So that was the thing about the Midult, is that it had to be, we knew we didn't want to be worthy, but we knew we were going to be either feeling-y or funny or both.
Yeah.
But either way, organic, because it just shines through so much. How could you be anything else other than your honest selves? It's not like you're going to flick into another mode when you've been speaking to each other like that for decades.
Well, also everything that we write about and everything that we talk about comes from a conversation that we've had with a human. So we might jazz it up a bit for laughs, but we're not actually making it up.
No.
Don't need to. So rich scene
exactly
plunder.
And I've literally, and Annabel has had this too, I had a woman walk, cycle past me on the street and just go, how did you get into my head? And then cycle past. And we're like, well,
and it's such a relief when you come across, things, like that, like the tone of your podcast and your website and your Instagram feed is all spot on for me. And I think I've sort of started trying to find, I think things are changing a bit and there is a bit more of that going on, but actually still a lot of the stuff that, midlife women are putting out there is still a bit twee and a bit just like doesn't quite hit the mark for me. But I mean, your podcast does.
Well, a lot of it feels quite expected, doesn't it? It feels quite, you're sort of like, well, I knew that.
Yeah.
And we were less interested in, the big, enormous seismic events, divorce, menopause, bankruptcy, aging. I'm more interested in those little micro crossroads that you have to negotiate all through every day, and how you can find that you'll feel like you're in an emotional pinball machine and they'll trigger you off in a direction that is really hard to come back from. And so it was literally how, every day feels like an assault course to me.
Yeah.
Even sitting here in lockdown on my bed,
Yeah. I know.
I can still cause trouble for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. But your conversations are, brutally honest, and I think, and so a line that made me howl the other day. I think you'd had somebody. It was the episode called "The Vagina Dialogues," and Annabel, you just sort of suddenly announced, "Let's talk about discharge," and I almost spat my tea out, and I just see that there is that it's very honest and authentic, I suppose. And, you know, we were chatting before about sort of losing sponsors over language and stuff. And, you know, but I think it's really clear when somebody is trying to be like that and not, but holding themselves back. And do you know what I mean? So,
well, with the vagina dialogues, and we had this wonderful Swedish gynecologist on who says vulva.
Yeah.
And when someone says
oh,
vulva,
she said, oh,
yes, or it makes you feel very safe, and you suddenly feel absurd for feeling embarrassed or coy or shy, which, by the way, Emily and I have been. You know, we were at school, you know, we used to talk about our bits, and then we talked about the princification and the Disneyfication of vaginas and vulvas. So now little girls have sort of nunnies and twinkles, and like, oh my God, what are we meant to know? What we know so little. We may have had babies, and we still know so little. So we had this lovely Swedish doctor on, and I knew we had to talk about discharge, and I don't really like yucky stuff, and I might swear a lot, but that stuff makes me nervous. So I think I just blurted it out.
Did you really psych yourself?
I just went, discharge!
Because it was such a powerful sentence that you
and
really
then and I remember
out.
her reply. Her reply was, discharge is one of my favourite things.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
But
do
you ever feel the need, either of you, to sort of filter or rein yourself in? I was going to ask, was there ever a time that you would have done? And obviously you've answered that, saying, you know, yes, like when you were younger and at school.
But the thing is, when you take charge of your own destiny, in other words, when you just do something and you're not doing something as an employee or as a wife or a daughter or a mother or a girlfriend or a colleague, when Emily and I got together and just thought, right, you know, we'll run our own tiny show, then it means you're not answerable. So it means that you can do things according to your comfort level, which, by the way, changes minute to minute. You know, we are under no obligation to be the same women that we were 10 years ago or even 10 minutes ago. So, you know, I might be happy to raw discharge 1 minute and then I won't want to say bosom the next. You know, it's all swings and roundabouts, really.
Sorry, can you say bosom again for me, darling? I love
it. Something else that I wanted to ask about women. Why do you think women, you know, grown-up women, say sort of, you know, women sort of 35 into their 50s, 60s, they are different now to women of that age in previous generations? Why do you think that is? What's influenced that? Well,
I think it's really interesting. One of our first strap lines for the Midult was "We are not our mothers," because for that precisely, exactly as you said, that the generations are so different. I think that a lot of it has to do with us having been brought up in an analog world, but then hit kind of work as digital humans. So if we've got we can remember, you know, sitting on the sofa and running to going to the loo in the ad breaks so that you didn't miss any Beverly Hills 90210. But at the same time, you know, we also have the Netflix habits of a kind of, you know, millennial. So I think that's I think that's quite a crucial difference in terms of that our parents, our mothers, didn't have that. And I think the other thing that's really important is the fact that we are talking in a way that that they never talked before. And I think it's something to do with a genuine feeling of sisterhood coming up, where that we don't see other women as threats in a way that the generation of women before us. And I think certainly at work, for example, coming up when we were in our 20s, there was sort of one woman at the top table, and you can see why that one woman struggled to make room, as well as also struggled to make room, but also struggled to find a way of making room. So there's a sort of tension going on there, and I think that, you know, that's changed a lot. Annabel, what do you think?
You really want to know? No, it's true. You know, it's like the idea was there wasn't enough pie to go round. You know, it was just there was one seat at the table for one woman, and if another woman was in the room, she was a direct threat to status. But also, there's something specific about Generation X. I think, you know, we're a sandwich generation, so we're in between millennials. Millennials now, the older millennials are in their early 40s, and the boomers, and we're smaller. And it's as though I'm rather overlooked and grew up through some quite difficult economic circumstances and socio-economic circumstances. And it's as though the marketing people felt that we had somehow sort of got stoned and fallen asleep when Kurt Cobain died, and then woken up 20 years later and suddenly it was all tenor lady. and sort of like, cover your grey roots. And we were very uncomfortable with that, with this, we wanted to rebrand the idea of middle age, which starts at 35, even though everyone pretends it starts at 55, because it felt like a dress that didn't fit, because it had been designed for our mothers. And, and in a way, sometimes I think they were condemned to a blue rinse and a waster at 35, whereas we are allowed to self-define. And so there's become, and so what we really embraced was an agnosticism around age, whereby it's a mindset, really. And so, if you can do your Pilates, you can listen to gangster rap, or you can do needlepoint and replace the oil in your Aga. You can do all of those.
Yeah.
There are so many colours to the rainbow. Yeah. So it was self-definition rather than really allowing other people to decide who we were going to be. And I think that our mothers didn't have that freedom.
No.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you're so right. There's so many of the external factors. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about people that I know. I mean, I do know a few, like people in their mid-30s. And sometimes it is just an individual, the way that you are hardwired in your DNA. They've got a pinny on, they're making house, they're doing the stuff that you would have done if you were 35, 20 years ago. So sometimes it does just come down to that individual sort of personality, don't you think?
I think it does, but I think also it's about acknowledgement. And so what Emilie and I do in everything that we do through work, but also what our generation do, which I don't think older generations were able to do without much more, trouble, is to acknowledge the endless internal combustibility that we feel, and to really, without being self-indulgent, although sometimes self-indulgence is quite fun, rifle around in our emotional knicker drawers and see what's knocking about, And shame is a problem for women. It's a problem for older women, but the thing about shame is that it doesn't like light. So if you shine the light on it, it shrivels away. And that's what we've tried to do, really, because we've all been so crippled by it. Guilt is, I created a problem, and shame is, I am the problem. It's a shitty way to live. And it's where Emilie and I were, boots on the ground when we first became great friends. Dripping with
and
it.
It's exhausting to live like that as well, isn't it? I'm sure there's lots of our listeners who will be, having those light bulb moments, hopefully, that, your listeners probably do on your podcast as well. It's like, oh God, I do that.
Yeah, why did I do that? Why did I say that? What's wrong with me? No wonder I'm so unlovable. And on and on and on in a sort of internal echo chamber, and it's just a horrible, traumatic way to live.
Yeah, I mean, no one speaks to me like I speak to myself. And I certainly wouldn't speak to anybody else like that. So why do I do that? It's just, it's terrible.
But also what we have, which our mothers don't have, and you can develop this, either you have it naturally or you get it through, a hardship, or when you've dug around enough in your own shame, is an ability to go, fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I can't be asked for this anymore. And just, and that can sometimes come together with perspective that can happen maybe when you're in your 30s or 40s, and form a kind of knowingness, a kind of wisdom, which is different from experience.
I think as well, going back to your sort of 35-year-olds in pinnies and making house, etc. I think that we were brought up to believe that we could do anything, and there's the idea that when we said, oh, I'd like to be a nurse, they said, no, you can be a doctor, but without offering any sort of structural support for these sort of grand aspirations. And I think that what younger generations have is an understanding that you can actually be who you want to be in a way without all those expectations somehow. It's sort of been softened as we go through it, and that more value is placed on living a full life rather than achievement,
Yes, because, we learnt to our cost that sort of having it all meant doing it all. And ending up, sort of problematically shattered.
Yeah.
Really.
Can I ask you a question? Have you guys had therapy?
Oh my God.
I mean, 25 years of therapy.
This is going to go one way or the other. I thought there is going, we are each other's therapy, or have you have done the, you've pulled up the sleeves and done the work. The work in,
Yeah, absolutely. Therapy and group therapy. And then, you're right. the way that Annabel and I talk to each other has become, we basically have daily check-ins every morning where we go, and it is micro. It's not sort of, I feel existentially traumatized. It's, I swore at the toaster. I hate everybody in the house.
We actually treat how are you as a question. And as a result, the people around us treat how are you as a question. Emily was at the school gates whenever, we were allowed to be at the school gates, and said someone, how are you? And they said, I've just had a hysterectomy and I think my therapist might be a bit of a dick. Like, oh, okay, morning. Because people know that we're a sort of, an open portal to talking about anything that you want to talk about. Yeah, so that's how we learn about people. It's completely brilliant.
Yeah. And it's
it is brilliant. But I guess you could have a T-shirt on one day saying, just the weather, please, let's just talk about the weather. I don't want to do a deep and meaningful today.
You say that, but with lockdown, I found myself saying to someone the other day, I think my favourite pasta shape is probably a shell. And I like linguine, but you can keep the tagliatelle. And really thinking this was a perfectly reasonable conversation to have, because now everything's got so micro and boring. I was having a conversation about like damp wood, the wouldn't light in the fireplace. And then I had one with Emilie the other day about loo brushes, and quite enjoying those really boring, comforting conversations
the granular elements of life.
I think that's been the other very sort of reductive thing about lockdown as well, is the way that old problems have come back in
demons.
Old demons. I feel like, because we have so little context now for the way that we live our lives. We're so and a lot of the ways we put ourselves together, whether it's work or whatever, have shifted. So so I've been particularly vulnerable to old stuff, like niggling at me going, do you remember when you did this? Or do you remember this feeling? Or, and I feel that that's been very hard. And I'm sure I'm not alone in finding that lockdown has kind of brought old wounds, opened old wounds. Does that make sense?
Oh God, that's so true, Emilie. I was washing up the other day and I had this feeling. I just remember being about 19 and going out with a guy who was in his sort of early 40s. This is overshare. Have we got the overshare jingle, Paul? And I remember how he used to wake me up by putting his dick in my face. He'd straddle my head. And this was a joke, right? It started off as a joke, and I was like, "Oh, we're at the early stages, so that's how I'm waking up now." And then, as the relationship went on, I say relationship, it was about 2 months. I was like, oh no, don't fancy that this morning, thank you. And he'd like ignore me that day on the pager and be like, you're moody. And me thinking, I swear to God, I'm in my home, I'm 43 years old, I've got 2 kids, I'm washing up, and I drop the fucking plate in the sink and think, oh my God, what was that about? How did I let somebody get away with? Do you know what I mean? So you're right. You go down those corridors of what's that? Is that abuse, coercive control? I don't know. Yeah, and just think, fucking hell.
Do you know what, Amy? That is so interesting, because I think that I had exactly that thing. I was listening to FK Twig's brilliant podcast with Louis Theroux, and I was suddenly thinking back in the context of an old relationship and thinking, oh my goodness, exactly like you, like behaviour is acceptable. And you do feel that full body fear that you did when you were 19 or 20 or however old you were. But also, exactly as you said, now I'm 46, thinking, oh my goodness, have I, obviously I've learnt this lesson, but at the same time, it suddenly feels so close. And I think that's...
And shameful, right? Really. And just like that you let somebody get away with that. But it's just, and then I'm like, I should use the dishwasher rather than fucking washing up. Then I wouldn't have these times to think about this.
Someone wrote into the We Are the Agony Aunts in the Saturday Telegraph magazine. Somebody wrote in with a problem saying, I broke up with a boyfriend, 5 years ago. I've been happily with someone else for 3 years. I now realise that my ex-boyfriend was gaslighting me, and it was a relationship, involving coercive control, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to process it. I feel incredibly upset, because I think the more people talk about this stuff, write about this stuff, are in dialogue about this stuff, the more people have a sort of understanding of behaviours that they have encountered. And just because it was a long time ago doesn't mean that you don't need to heal and to work out, what that means to you in the context of your life, and to work out that, it was information about him and not information about you.
But that opportunity to, which I think, like your podcast certainly does, and your Instagram account as well, is that opportunity to have those things normalised because they're being talked about, and it just comes back to that people going, like you were saying, Emilie, were you saying about somebody saying to you about, how did you know what I was thinking? And, that's enormously valuable, to have your feelings normalised, I think.
Well, it's connection, isn't it? And without that, we get into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about female friendships? Because I can't remember. I know I read somewhere, and I can't remember where, one of you said something that I have always maintained, which is that women who don't have long-standing female friendships aren't to be trusted. Is that correct? Is that what
sounds so judgmental and awful?
I know.
And I think that was me, and I would rephrase it.
Yeah.
And I would say it's interesting when women don't have really old friends, and it makes you wonder.
Well, you see, I said it once and I was shot down on social media for saying it, but I've thought about it. And then today I read something by a psychologist who was talking about the new Sex and the City series that's going to come out, minus Kim.
Samantha.
Yes, yeah. And she was talking about female friendships and saying that actually it's not unusual for women not to have long-standing female friends. And she sort of had a completely opposite opinion to mine, but I kind of still stand by mine. My experience is when I have met women who it's turned out I've been like, yeah, no, I don't trust you. If I meet women and they haven't got sort of long-standing female friends, every time they have turned out to be somebody that I don't trust.
I think that I think if I think about the people I know who have have only got quite new friendships, then I think usually there's some unexplored trauma there.
Yeah.
And there's been some very, very disrupting things that have happened which have caused breakages. Because it's unlikely that from when you're 11 or whatever, you just skip through life dumping people and being dumped. Usually that stuff has got in the way.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And also it's that skill of maintaining a friendship over decades, because obviously, like you were saying before, your lives do hit these speed bumps, don't they? And it's how everyone sort of deals with that. Also, you do get into relationships where maybe you put all your eggs in that relationship basket, and then when that breaks down, you look up and everyone's fucked off. And those skills to maintain those friendships, if you don't have those skills, how do you develop those skills? And you're right, I guess then maybe you do give off that wave that obviously Louise is like a detector with these things. You pick up that kind of vibe.
What I think is really interesting is what it's like to make new friends when you're over 30. Because it happens more rarely, and when it does happen, it's so romantic.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
You're not in a great big pool at university, or hopping around from job to job, maybe in quite the same way, or in a position to go to the pub every night. So when you do make close friends when you're in your 30s and 40s, it feels like you're watching something flower. It's just it's just wonderful. It's a bit like falling in love.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a lovely segue actually, because even though we've like you were saying before, there is obviously that there are those darkness, there's that trauma, and we all carry that rucksack of shit with us, don't we? It's impossible not to. But you're right. There is that all the joyful stuff and the. Oh God, the hilarity and the beauty of getting older. I mean, what else have you noticed that apart? I guess you were saying before about the fuck it factor that you either have genetically, or maybe we gain that as we get older. What else have you noticed about being mature that is really fabulous?
I think that the laughter, as you say. I think that, you know, you think you laugh, you know, hysterically when you're a teenager. When you're older, you laugh. Everything concertina's up at you, and you laugh with all the hilarity and desperation of someone who's, you know, been lucky enough to be on this planet for a bit longer. So I think that's a big part of it. Just your ability to find things deeply, deeply funny.
Yeah, sick and wrong things as well, basically. Just like, but I think as well, personally, I'm longing for the moment where I feel like I don't immediately look round for a more grown-up person to answer the question that's been asked of me. I mean, I'm still in the phase where I'm driving the car and I'm thinking, holy fuck, I'm driving the car. Like, it's sort of, and I feel it's sort of the idea that I am responsible for anything is sort of given the internal vortex sort of, you know, that goes on inside is sort of amazing. So yes, it's sort of like, how old do I have to be before I know if I have a clue about what's going on or how I'm going to feel about something?
Yeah, it would be nice also if everyone could ease off saying that, you know, 60 is the new 40 or whatever. I mean, we you know that we're the new grey, and does it matter that we're not the new black? And we wrote something ages ago sort of saying maybe 40 is the new fuck off. Please. Yeah. Please stop saying, because because you talk about getting older, but anti-aging is such a mad and bad and dangerous and dangerous phrase, and there's so much self-loathing woven into that. So it can be disorientating to realise that you're 20 years older than you think you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think there is. I find now if I on the very rare occasions that I can't scroll, you know, like fast forward through adverts, if I see that, you know, here we go, burning the sponsorship bridge again, like the Oil of Ulay ads, or like defy the 7 signs of aging, and I just think, oh God, that to me now rings so bullshitty, because it's sort of like, what? Why? Even seeing is it Eva Longoria who's there like spraying in her grey roots on my news feed? You know, that's coming up of sort of like, and I think, well, shit, look how grey you are, but that's beautiful. That colour is lovely, but it is that thing of like, we all just want to. I don't know.
I've got a theory. I've got a theory, which is that grey hair is beautiful, but grey roots make you look deranged.
Yeah.
There are various things that make you look deranged when you're over 35. Rip tights make you look deranged. Yeah. Chip nail varnish makes you look deranged. You know, smudge mascara makes you look. All those things that are sort of cute and adorable to start becoming like, oh my God, that woman is unhinged.
But also, don't you hate it when it's like the headlines are like 50 and still amazing, and you think, fucking hell, thanks.
We know that a man must have written that, surely. I mean, right? I mean, and even going back to our glib point that we were making about losing sponsorship deals, I think it's really interesting, because if there was more diversity around those boardroom tables making those decisions about where that money went, then there would be people going, well, no, surely this is where we need to be, because you know, it's astounding. I feel like there is a bit of a sea change.
Well, I mean, listen, women age, if you're talking, you know, marketing, women age 35 to 55 are a financial superpower.
Yeah.
And also, if you go online, you buy a pair of, I don't know, Adidas Stan Smiths or whatever it might be, jeans, you know, then you could be buying them for you, your daughter, your mother. You know, we're a portal to cross-generational spend. And yet people are very obsessed with Gen Z.
Yeah, indeed. Can I just ask you very quickly on that sort of topic? You know, when we were talking earlier about the fact that we've evolved, and so we're on Instagram and we're having those sort of wider conversations, and that's all great. But what do you think about TikTok? I think anyone over 25 should not be there.
Emilie loves TikTok. Go, Em.
Oh, so sorry, I'm obsessed with TikTok.
Really?
Current things that I'm obsessed with are Sylvanian drama account. So if you ever need to do it, which is basically terrible. So it's Gossip Girl type situations, or Sex and the City situations, but done with Sylvanian creatures. It's absolutely brilliant.
Where is this? On TikTok?
Yeah, on TikTok. So I think so right now on TikTok, there's feuds between two cults, Hamster Cult and the Lana Del Rey cult. Lana Del Rey is very normal. It's just the Lana Del Rey fans who are just like, we love Lana Del Rey. And somebody just for no reason whatsoever decided that hamsters were better than Lana Del Rey and has started a cult. And all you have to do is change your profile pic to a particular picture of a hamster in order to define yourself. Oh, right. And then you go around saying, I love hamsters. And honestly, it's bigger than Lana Del Rey. Oh. Honestly, I think it's so great. Actually, I so love it because it's such a good antidote, counter proposal to the kind of the chilliness of Instagram now, where you feel like there is such a kind of pressure of some kind of, even the ones that are writing about being a mess are not really a mess. And TikTok is a mess, and it is terrifying when you first go on it. You think, oh my God, no, but actually. Get lost in the chaos. Just surrender to the chaos, Emilie. Is that what you're telling us? That's what you're advising? That's what I'm advising. I'm advising everybody should do it.
Well,
look up Sylvanian drama.
If you're advising it, I'm doing it then because I trust that. So, okay, thank you. So I think we're sort of done now, but thank you so much for being our guests today, Emilie and Annabel. Oh yeah, we love your podcast, your website, your Instagram feed. And we're going to stick all the links to all of that in our episode notes.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's been great. I've loved it. Thank you.
It's been so nice to chat. Thank you.
Bye, Louise. Bye, Amy.
Bye, Amy. Bye, Louise. Bye.
A podcast from producer Paul